Beer, the frothy nectar of the gods, a liquid companion to Friday nights, heartbreaks, and everything in between. But have you ever wondered how this bubbly brew went from a humble refreshment to a magic potion people drank and bathed in, all while thinking it could cure ailments, grant eternal youth, or even ward off evil spirits? That's right, beer was more than a drink. It was an experience steeped in strange beliefs and hilarious superstitions. Before we dive in, pun intended, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on more fascinating, weird, and occasionally foamy topics like this one. Now, let's pop the top off this frothy history lesson. Beer, the multitasker of ancient times. Long before beer became the go-to beverage for watching football, it was a superstar in ancient rituals, healing practices, and personal hygiene routines. People believed beer could do it all. Heal your ailments, clean your body, improve your luck, and maybe even help you find love. It was like the Swiss Army knife of ancient liquids. Bathing in beer, a luxury spa experience, or just plain weird? Imagine this. You're living in medieval Europe. Your neighbor stinks because, well, soap isn't a thing yet. But you're ahead of your time, soaking in a tub full of beer. Why? Because you believe it'll cure your skin ailments, make you smell amazing, and maybe, just maybe, help you live longer. Beer baths weren't just about cleanliness, or a lack thereof. They were rooted in some wild theories. Ancient Egyptians believed that hops, the magical ingredient in beer, had healing properties. So, naturally, bathing in it was like swimming in liquid health insurance. The only problem? No one told them that soaking in a beer bath might leave you smelling less like a flower and more like a brewery explosion. Even in modern times, beer spas are a thing. Yes, you can still pay good money to sit in a tub of beer. Whether it's for the antioxidants or the Instagram likes, the tradition lives on. Drinking beer for health. Medieval medicine 101. When life gave medieval folks illnesses, they reached for beer. Why? Because it was safer than water. Back in the day, water wasn't exactly filtered or bottled. Drinking it was like playing Russian roulette with your digestive system. Beer, on the other hand, was boiled during the brewing process, killing off nasty bacteria. So, technically, it was healthier than water. But it didn't stop there. People believed beer could cure everything from the common cold to a broken heart. Got a headache? Drink beer. Feeling sad? Drink beer. Lost your favorite goat? You guessed it, drink beer. Monks, the original brewmasters, even prescribed beer as a remedy. They called it liquid bread because it was packed with nutrients. Honestly, the monks were onto something. If carbs could heal the soul, a pint of beer was like an IV drip of happiness. Beer versus evil spirits, a battle for the ages. If you think beer is just for happy hours, think again. In ancient times, it was considered a powerful weapon against evil spirits. Yep, people believed that offering beer to the gods or sprinkling it around their homes could keep demons at bay. In Norse mythology, beer was practically a VIP guest at every party in Valhalla. Warriors drank it to celebrate their victories and to ensure the gods didn't smite them with bad luck. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, people left bowls of beer as offerings to spirits. Because nothing says "please don't haunt me" like a pint of lager. Beer baths and beauty, the OG Instagram trend. Let's not forget the beauty benefits of beer, or so people thought. In the 19th century, women believed beer could give them luscious locks and radiant skin. Hair masks made with beer were all the rage. It's like today's avocado toast, trendy, questionable, and kind of expensive. To be fair, beer does contain vitamins and proteins that are good for hair. But bathing in it? That's a whole new level of commitment. It's like saying, I want shiny hair, but I also want to smell like a frat party. Superstitions brewing in the mug. If you think beer culture is quirky now, wait until you hear about the superstitions that brewed around it. 1. Spilled beer was a sign from the universe. Spilling beer was considered a major faux pas, not just because it wasted precious booze, but because it was thought to bring bad luck. In some cultures, spilling beer meant you were about to face financial ruin or a tragic love life. So next time you knock over your pint, just remember, You're not clumsy, you're cursed. 2. Froth told your fortune. Ever stared at the frothy head of your beer and wondered what it could tell you about your future? No. Well, medieval beer drinkers did. They believed the amount and consistency of foam on your beer revealed your destiny. Thick foam, prosperity is on its way. No foam, better start praying. 3. Beer for the dead. In some cultures, beer was offered to the deceased to ensure their journey to the afterlife was smooth. Imagine dying and your loved ones send you off with a keg instead of flowers. Now that's a funeral worth attending. Beer and romance. Swipe right on the ale. Beer wasn't just a drink or a bath, it was a certified love potion. In ancient Germany, brides bathed in beer before their wedding to ensure fertility and marital bliss. Because what says forever yours better than the aroma of fermented barley wafting down the aisle? Romantic superstitions didn't stop there. In some cultures, couples shared beer as a bonding ritual, believing it strengthened their love and sealed their connection. Forget candlelit dinners or expensive gifts. Sharing a pint was the ultimate gesture of affection. Beer was the original date night essential, proving that sometimes true love is just a mug away. Cheers to a frothy and fermented happily ever after, the not-so-scientific science behind beer beliefs. While most of these practices might sound absurd today, they made sense at the time, kind of. People didn't have access to modern medicine or Google, so they relied on trial and error. If beer seemed to make you feel better, it was obviously magic, right? But let's be real, most of these beliefs were just an excuse to drink more beer. And honestly, who can blame them? Life was tough. If soaking in beer or offering it to spirits made the days a little brighter, why not go for it? Beer, from ancient superstitions to modern obsessions. Today, beer is still celebrated, though mostly for its taste and ability to bring people together. While we've left behind the superstitions and rituals, beer baths and beer-inspired beauty products are making a comeback. So maybe the ancients were onto something after all. Conclusion: the history of beer is as bubbly as the drink itself. From curing illnesses to warding off evil spirits, people have believed some truly wild things about this beloved beverage. And while we might not be bathing in it or offering it to ghosts anymore, beer continues to hold a special place in our hearts and our mugs. So next time you crack open a cold one, raise your glass to the ancient superstitions and the people who believed beer was the answer to all of life's problems. After all, in a world full of questions, sometimes the best answer is just beer. If you enjoyed this trip through history's quirks, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Cheers. Diving into the strangest, funniest, and downright bizarre peace treaties ever signed. You won't believe some of the ways countries tried to avoid war, or just make peace in the oddest ways. Before we jump into it, remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our weird and wonderful deep dives into history's craziest moments. Let's get started. 1. The war that wasn't. The 335 Years' War. Imagine this. England and the Netherlands were technically at war for 335 years, without a single battle fought. It all started in 1651, when the Isles of Scilly, off the coast of England, declared war on the Netherlands. But here's the kicker, they completely forgot about it. The war lasted until 1986, when a historian realized the two were still technically enemies. A peace treaty was signed immediately, and everyone had a good laugh. 3 centuries of hostility, and not a single casualty. 2. Liechtenstein's peaceful retreat. The war with 0 casualties? Tiny Liechtenstein declared war on Italy in World War I and sent out a whopping 80 men for combat. But instead of fighting, they ended up having an extended hiking trip, meeting locals, and even befriending an Italian soldier who joined them on their way back. They returned to Liechtenstein with 81 men. True story. Peace came with 0 casualties and 1 new friend. How's that for conflict resolution? 3. The Anglo-Zanzibar War. Over before breakfast, the world's shortest war was between the United Kingdom and the Sultanate of Zanzibar in 1896. After a mere 38 minutes, yes, shorter than your favorite sitcom, Zanzibar surrendered. They signed a treaty within the hour. Blink and you missed it. This was less of a war and more of a strongly worded disagreement settled in record time. 4. The Treaty of Tordesillas, dividing the world, but forgetting a lot of it. In 1494, Portugal and Spain signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, essentially splitting the New World between them with a line drawn on a map. They didn't even realize how huge the Americas were, let alone Australia. Both sides acted like they had just split a pizza, and somehow it didn't dawn on them that they had left out half the world. Classic case of too big, didn't measure. 5. The Perpetual Peace of Perpetual Annoyance, Treaty of Perpetual Peace, 1502. This treaty was meant to end hostilities between Scotland and England forever. Guess how that went? Just 10 years later, the Scots and English were back at each other's throats. Turns out forever is more of a suggestion when it comes to peace treaties. Maybe if they'd used a bolder font, they'd have taken it more seriously. 6. Peace with an ostrich feather. The Treaty of Granada, 1500s. When Spain and France made peace in 1500, it was a grand affair. The terms included the marriage of Spanish and French royalty, and the exchange of elaborate gifts. Among the gifts was an ostrich feather hat, symbolizing peace and fashion, apparently. We're not sure if it was the hat that kept them at peace or just their mutual love of fashion, but hey, if an ostrich feather can stop a war, let's not knock it. Conclusion: history is full of treaties, but some of the most fascinating ones were filled with weird demands, misunderstandings, and occasionally peacekeeping emus. It goes to show that when it comes to diplomacy, anything can happen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more mind-blowing stories from history. Have you ever wondered if someone's last words could actually be funny? Today, we're diving into the most hilarious and outrageous parting words ever spoken. While death is usually a serious subject, some people have managed to make their final moments truly memorable and downright comical. From witty remarks to unexpected punchlines, these legendary last words will have you laughing and shaking your head. Stick around to hear some of the funniest final thoughts ever shared. And before we wrap up, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss out on more quirky, fun, and bizarre content. You definitely won't want to miss what's coming next. 1. I told you I was sick. Spike Milligan, a British-Irish comedian, was known for his absurd and dark sense of humor. So it's no surprise that even in death, he found a way to make people laugh. His gravestone famously reads, "I told you I was ill." It's the kind of humor that makes you chuckle and think, yeah, he really went there. It's the ultimate "I told you so," and who wouldn't want to have that mic drop moment as their last? 2. Either that wallpaper goes or I do. Oscar Wilde. The famous playwright and poet Oscar Wilde had a flair for the dramatic in life, and his exit was no exception. On his deathbed, Wilde took one final jab at the decor in his Paris hotel room. The wit here is undeniable. Even while fading away, Wilde kept his sharp tongue intact, critiquing the aesthetics of his surroundings. He literally died on a high note, reminding us that style matters, even when you're checking out of life. 3. I'm bored with it all. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister known for his stirring speeches and leadership during World War II, might not be the first person you'd expect to have a witty sign-off. But even he got fed up with life at the end. His final words, "I'm bored with it all," suggest that after living through some of the most momentous events in history, nothing else could really keep him entertained. Talk about a dramatic exit. 4. I should never have switched from scotch to martinis. Humphrey Bogart, classic Hollywood actor Humphrey Bogart, was known for his rugged charm and apparently his loyalty to scotch. On his deathbed, he reportedly regretted switching his favorite drink. It's the kind of humor that anyone who enjoys a stiff drink can appreciate. We're sure plenty of people raised a glass of scotch in his honor after hearing his final regret. 5. Die, my dear? Why, that's the last thing I'll do. Groucho Marx. the legendary comedian Groucho Marx lived his life as a king of one-liners, and he didn't let death stop him from delivering one last zinger. When asked if he was worried about dying, Groucho quipped, "Die, my dear? Why, that's the last thing I'll do." It's a joke layered in irony, because of course it was the last thing he would ever do. 6. This is no way to live. Groucho Marx. Again. Okay, we have to include Groucho one more time because his wit just couldn't be contained. As he was slipping away, he reportedly looked at the hospital staff and declared this is no way to live. Whether it was the hospital gown or the poor service, we'll never know. But Groucho managed to stay sarcastic till the very end. 7. I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. Leonardo da Vinci. Now, this one might seem more serious, but it's also pretty funny when you think about it. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the greatest artists and inventors in history, wasn't satisfied with his own work. Really, Leonardo? If you're the guy who painted the Mona Lisa and you still feel like you could have done better, then the rest of us are doomed. It's a strangely humble and self-deprecating final statement from a certified genius. There you have it, some of the funniest, most clever last words people have ever said. Whether it's irony, sarcasm, or just sheer absurdity, these people found humor even in their final moments. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Have you ever wondered how a single miscommunication could completely change the course of history? Well, it turns out it happens more than you'd think, and some of the results are downright hilarious. From military blunders to diplomatic disasters, history is full of moments where things went way off track because of a simple misunderstanding. Get ready to dive into some of the funniest and most unexpected miscommunications that altered history in major ways. These aren't just little mistakes, they're real moments that had massive consequences, and trust me, you'll be laughing the whole way through. If you love quirky, jaw-dropping stories from the past, make sure to stick around until the end. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on more amazing content like this. 1. Send reinforcements. We're going to advance. Miscommunications during wartime can be funny and disastrous. One famous example comes from the Crimean War. British officer Lord Raglan sent a message to the Light Brigade. Send reinforcements. We're going to advance. But by the time the message reached the troops, it was twisted into, send reinforcements. We're going to a dance. As you might guess, things didn't go well. The miscommunication led to the infamous charge of the Light Brigade, where soldiers charged straight into Russian artillery, suffering devastating losses. All because someone thought they heard the word dance. Not exactly the party they were expecting. 2. Napoleon's rabbit problem. Even Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's greatest military leaders, wasn't immune to a funny misunderstanding. In 1807, after a successful campaign, Napoleon decided to host a massive rabbit hunt. His officers rounded up thousands of rabbits for him and his men to hunt down. But here's the twist. Instead of wild rabbits, they gathered domesticated ones. When Napoleon gave the signal to start the hunt, instead of running away, the rabbits ran straight towards him and his men. The fluffy creatures thought they were about to be fed, not hunted. Napoleon and his troops ended up scrambling away from an army of hungry bunnies. Not exactly a glorious victory. 3. The Pig War. The war that wasn't. In 1859, a conflict between the US and Britain over the San Juan Islands almost erupted into war, all because of a pig. A British pig wandered on to an American settler's land and started eating his potatoes. Annoyed, the settler shot the pig. What followed was an absurd escalation. Both nations sent troops to the island. Tensions ran high, and it looked like war was about to break out over a single pig. Luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and no one was hurt, except the pig. This ridiculous episode became known as the Pig War, and it remains one of the history's strangest near conflicts. 4. The Battle of Caransebeş. The Drunken Battle. In 1788, during a campaign against the Ottoman Empire, the Austrian army got into one of the most absurd battles ever, against itself. One night, some soldiers stumbled upon alcohol while scouting and decided to get drunk. When they returned to camp, another division mistook the drunken soldiers for the enemy, and chaos broke out. They opened fire on each other, and the confusion escalated. Someone shouted, "Turks!" and the entire army retreated in panic. By morning, hundreds of Austrian soldiers were dead, all due to a drunken miscommunication. The Ottoman Empire didn't have to do a thing. What did you think? It's crazy how a simple misunderstanding can change history, right? Exploring the strangest, most ridiculous laws that have existed throughout history. You won't believe what people used to follow. But before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our wild facts. Now, let's get to it. You've probably heard of quirky laws like the one in Arizona where it's illegal for donkeys to sleep in bathtubs. But ever wonder why they even existed? People back then had some seriously peculiar ideas. Let's start with one of the most bizarre from ancient history. The Pharaoh's toes, ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, there was a law that dictated the precise shape of the pharaoh's toes. Yes, you heard that right. The toes of the pharaoh were considered so important that they had to be perfectly symmetrical. Any deformity, however minor, was believed to be a sign of weakness or an ill omen. Imagine living in a time where your toes could determine your worth as a ruler. Talk about totally insane. Cue drumroll for bad joke. But the Egyptians weren't the only ones with peculiar laws. Medieval beard tax. Russia. Let's fast forward to the 18th century and head over to Russia. Back in the day, Tsar Peter the Great wasn't a fan of beards. In fact, he was so against facial hair that he passed a law imposing a beard tax. If you wanted to rock a beard, you had to pay for the privilege. Men who wanted to keep their glorious beards had to carry a special coin to prove they'd paid their dues. And if you were caught without the coin, time to kiss that beard goodbye. This was all part of Peter's push to modernize Russia and bring it more in line with Western Europe's clean-shaven look. But can you imagine today's beard trendsetters having to pay for their facial hair? Ouch! The Great Cheese Rebellion, France. Now this next one is really cheesy. Let's talk about France, where they love their cheese. Back in the 16th century, a law was passed banning cheese made from unpasteurized milk in certain regions. The people? Not happy about it. They loved their raw milk cheeses and weren't about to let the government take that away. This law actually caused a minor rebellion where people took to the streets to demand their right to their beloved cheese. It was like the dairy version of the Boston Tea Party. Thankfully, the law was eventually lifted, and today you can enjoy some of the finest cheeses in France. No rebellion required. Dancing ban, Puritan America. Next up, let's hop over to colonial America, where the Puritans imposed a particularly strange law. They banned dancing. That's right, if you were caught dancing in public, you could be fined or even jailed. The Puritans believed that dancing led to sinful behavior and wanted to keep everyone on the straight and narrow. It's hard to imagine a time where something as harmless as busting a move could land you in trouble. Nowadays, we have dance challenges on TikTok. Back then, you'd be challenging the law. Thankfully, this law didn't last, and you can now dance your heart out in public with zero fear of legal consequences. Banning the color yellow. China, finally. Let's talk about a bizarre law from China's Ming Dynasty. At one point, it was illegal for anyone other than the emperor and his family to wear the color yellow. Yellow was seen as the color of the sun, a symbol of power and divine rule. Anyone caught wearing yellow who wasn't of royal blood could face severe punishment. Can you imagine having to carefully choose your outfits every day just to make sure you didn't accidentally wear the wrong color? Conclusion. And there you have it, some of the weirdest, most head-scratching laws from history. It's hard to believe that people actually had to live under these rules. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. And if you know of any other strange laws, share them below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about crazy facts from history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's a lot more weirdness where this came from. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video, exploring the strangest, most ridiculous laws that have existed throughout history. You won't believe what people used to follow. But before we dive in, Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our wild facts. Now, let's get to it. You've probably heard of quirky laws like the one in Arizona where it's illegal for donkeys to sleep in bathtubs. But ever wonder why they even existed? People back then had some seriously peculiar ideas. Let's start with one of the most bizarre from ancient history: the pharaoh's toes, ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, there was a law that dictated the precise shape of the pharaoh's toes. Yes, you heard that right. The toes of the pharaoh were considered so important that they had to be perfectly symmetrical. Any deformity, however minor, was believed to be a sign of weakness or an ill omen. Imagine living in a time where your toes could determine your worth as a ruler. Talk about toe tally insane. Cue drumroll for bad joke. But the Egyptians weren't the only ones with peculiar laws. Medieval beard tax. Russia. Let's fast forward to the 18th century and head over to Russia. Back in the day, Tsar Peter the Great wasn't a fan of beards. In fact, he was so against facial hair that he passed a law imposing a beard tax. If you wanted to rock a beard, you had to pay for the privilege. Men who wanted to keep their glorious beards had to carry a special coin to prove they'd paid their dues. And if you were caught without the coin, time to kiss that beard goodbye. This was all part of Peter's push to modernize Russia and bring it more in line with Western Europe's clean-shaven look. But can you imagine today's beard trendsetters having to pay for their facial hair? Ouch! The Great Cheese Rebellion, France. Now this next one is really cheesy. Let's talk about France, where they love their cheese. Back in the 16th century, a law was passed banning cheese made from unpasteurized milk in certain regions. The people? Not happy about it. They loved their raw milk cheeses and weren't about to let the government take that away. This law actually caused a minor rebellion where people took to the streets to demand their right to their beloved cheese. It was like the dairy version of the Boston Tea Party. Thankfully, the law was eventually lifted, and today you can enjoy some of the finest cheeses in France. No rebellion required. Dancing ban, Puritan America. Next up, let's hop over to colonial America, where the Puritans imposed a particularly strange law. They banned dancing. That's right, if you were caught dancing in public, you could be fined or even jailed. The Puritans believed that dancing led to sinful behavior and wanted to keep everyone on the straight and narrow. It's hard to imagine a time where something as harmless as busting a move could land you in trouble. Nowadays, we have dance challenges on TikTok. Back then, you'd be challenging the law. Thankfully, this law didn't last, and you can now dance your heart out in public with zero fear of legal consequences. Banning the color yellow. China, finally. Let's talk about a bizarre law from China's Ming Dynasty. At one point, it was illegal for anyone other than the emperor and his family to wear the color yellow. Yellow was seen as the color of the sun, a symbol of power and divine rule. Anyone caught wearing yellow who wasn't of royal blood could face severe punishment. Can you imagine having to carefully choose your outfits every day just to make sure you didn't accidentally wear the wrong color? Conclusion. And there you have it, some of the weirdest, most head-scratching laws from history. It's hard to believe that people actually had to live under these rules. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. And if you know of any other strange laws, share them below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about crazy facts from history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's a lot more weirdness where this came from. Fashion has always pushed boundaries, setting trends that range from timelessly chic to hilariously absurd. Every generation seems to have its "what were they thinking?" moments, and looking back, some trends are just downright baffling. From sky-high wigs to dresses wider than doorways, we're about to dive into the most ridiculous fashion choices that, for whatever reason, caught on in the past. Make sure to hit that subscribe button before we get started. Trust us, you don't want to miss any of these fashion faux pas. 1. 18th century powdered wigs and white faces. Imagine strolling through the streets of 1700s Europe, balancing a 2-foot wig made of human or horsehair, powdered with flour and starch to achieve that fashionable white look. This towering wig, popularized by King Louis XIV and his court, was the ultimate status symbol, sometimes even decorated with ribbons, flowers, or miniature ships for extra flair. Beyond style, these wigs were a practical solution for hygiene issues, concealing unwashed hair and fending off lice. Practical? Maybe. Fashionable? Well, you decide. 2. 16th century, the ruff. Elizabethan fashion took the bigger is better motto to heart with the ruff, a massive, frilly collar that could make even the longest necks disappear. This fashion accessory, favored by Queen Elizabeth I, often looked like someone had strapped a stiff, pleated paper plate around their neck. Ruffs had to be heavily starched and were so wide that turning your head to look around wasn't an option. Some ruffs reached up to a foot in width, making it look like wearers were constantly ready for a royal meal. And if you think the ruff was an innocent fashion choice, think again. Ruffs were actually quite dangerous. Some were so tight that they restricted blood flow to the brain, causing dizziness. All for the sake of fashion. 3. 1920s. Cloche hats. Fast forward a few centuries, and we land in the roaring 20s, an era of glam and glitz. Women were stepping out in beaded dresses, bobbed hair, and, of course, the infamous cloche hat. Shaped like a bell, or a helmet, depending on who you ask, the cloche hat covered women's eyes almost entirely, leaving them to navigate the world like fashion-forward moles. These hats were stylishly impractical. Wearers had to tilt their heads just to see where they were going. Yet, these hats became all the rage, proving once again that style doesn't always need to make sense. 4. 1970s. Disco fever platforms. In the disco-crazed 1970s, platform shoes reached new heights. Literally. Both men and women strapped on shoes with heels that could reach up to 4 inches or more, prancing across dance floors in danger of twisting an ankle at every turn. Picture John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, gliding in platform shoes that made him look like he was on stilts. And if you were wondering about the practicality, there was none. You could barely walk, but hey, you looked fabulous doing it. 5. 1500s. Farthingales and hoop skirts. Back in the 16th century, women's dresses reached such exaggerated widths that fitting through a doorway became a legitimate challenge. Enter the farthingale, a hoop skirt that expanded the dress outwards in every direction. This Spanish import made women look like they were wearing a tent, and sitting down in one of these monstrosities was almost impossible. The goal was to make the waist appear smaller, but it mostly just made ladies look like they were dragging a small circus tent behind them. Why do we do it? It's hard to say why some trends take off and endure, no matter how ridiculous they seem in hindsight. Maybe it's the thrill of standing out, or the desire to keep up with the elite. Whatever the reason, these trends show us one thing. Fashion is always changing, and what's in today could easily become the laughingstock of tomorrow. Love might make the world go round, but breakups? Oh, they fuel the drama, the chaos, and in some cases, the downfall of entire empires. You think texting "we need to talk" is bad? Try delivering a breakup speech when the stakes are the control of a nation, your place in history, or your literal head. In this comedic stroll through history's most dramatic splits, we'll dive into the relationship gossip of the ancient and not-so-ancient world. Did Cleopatra ghost Mark Antony? Did Napoleon cry into his tiny hat when Josephine called it quits? Spoiler alert, history's greatest leaders might have conquered kingdoms, but love often conquered them. But before we spill this ancient tea, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Join the gang for more history with a twist, because why read a dusty textbook when you can laugh your way through the past? Let's jump into it. 1. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. When Egypt met Rome. Cleopatra was the queen of two things, Egypt and drama. After wrapping Julius Caesar around her finger, or whatever ancient bling she wore, she moved on to Mark Antony, a Roman general who, by all accounts, should have known better. These two were the ancient power couple, until Rome decided it wasn't a fan of their relationship. Imagine the scene. Octavian, later Augustus, launches a smear campaign claiming Antony was ditching Roman values for Cleopatra's, charms. Antony, caught between his love life and his homeland, spirals into a political and emotional meltdown. The breakup? Well, let's just say it ended with Antony falling on his sword, literally, and Cleopatra hugging an asp snake. 2. Henry VIII and all his wives. Swipe left, Your Majesty. When it comes to dramatic breakups, Henry VIII doesn't have just one. This guy collected divorces like medieval trading cards. If Tinder had existed in Tudor England, his bio would have read, King of England, looking for love, no Catholics, heads may roll. It all started with Catherine of Aragon. After 20 years of marriage, Henry decided she was more first pancake than forever partner. When the Pope refused to annul the marriage, Henry broke up with the entire Catholic Church instead. Anne Boleyn fared even worse. Henry gave her a ring, a crown, and eventually a one-way ticket to the chopping block. Jane Seymour died of natural causes, lucky woman, while Anne of Cleves probably threw a party when Henry called her his sister and let her go without incident. The rest of his wives? Let's just say till death do us part wasn't optional. 3. Napoleon and Josephine. Love in the time of tiny hats. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't just a brilliant military strategist, he was also head over heels for Josephine, the older woman who stole his heart. But like most power couples, they had their issues. Napoleon's frequent absences, conquering Europe and all, led to some extracurricular activities on Josephine's part. Napoleon wasn't exactly faithful either. But when it came to drama, Josephine had him beat. When they finally divorced, it wasn't for lack of love. Napoleon needed a wife who could give him an heir, and Josephine, though fabulous, couldn't deliver. The breakup ceremony was so extra that both of them cried while signing the papers. Napoleon's second wife? Not nearly as iconic. 4. Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. Not a love story. This isn't so much a breakup as a slow, awkward drift apart, mostly because of guillotines. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were the ultimate mismatched couple. He was shy and indecisive. She was the life of the party. Together, they managed to mismanage France into the French Revolution. By the time the revolutionaries stormed Versailles, their love life was the least of their worries. The breakup came courtesy of the French people, who decided to cut ties and heads, literally. 5. Mark Twain and his publishers. The slow burn breakup. Sure, this isn't romantic, but it's worth mentioning. Mark Twain, the king of wit, had a love-hate relationship with his publishers that was as fiery as any romance. Twain would sign contracts, break contracts, and write scathing letters about anyone who dared misprint his work. In one of his most dramatic moves, he founded his own publishing company to avoid dealing with middlemen. Spoiler, it failed spectacularly. His publishing breakups didn't involve swords or guillotines, but they did leave Twain perpetually broke. 6. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Breakup, makeup, repeat. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we meet Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, Hollywood's reigning drama royalty. They met on the set of Cleopatra, because of course they did, and fell madly, passionately, and destructively in love. They married, divorced, remarried, and divorced again, leaving a trail of smashed champagne glasses and tabloid headlines in their wake. Their love story was so chaotic that even their breakups needed sequels. Fans couldn't get enough, but for Taylor and Burton, the cycle of love and war eventually burned out. 7. Romeo and Juliet, the OG tragic breakup. Okay, so they were fictional, but Shakespeare based something on reality, right? Romeo and Juliet are history's ultimate star-crossed lovers, whose breakup ended in mutual disaster. Who knew that a misunderstanding over sleeping potions could cause so much chaos? 8. Anne and Charles Lindbergh, When Fame Flies Away. Aviation pioneers, Anne and Charles Lindbergh had a marriage that started with soaring success and ended in, well, turbulence. They were America's golden couple until Charles's controversial political opinions and secret children in Europe made Anne question their entire relationship. Their marriage technically didn't end, but Anne's eventual memoir painted a picture of emotional distance and growing resentment. 9. Cleopatra, again, and Julius Caesar, love, betrayal, and assassination. Before her ill-fated romance with Mark Antony, Cleopatra had a fling with Julius Caesar. Their relationship was the ancient world's equivalent of celebrity gossip, complete with scandal, illegitimate children, and political fallout. When Caesar was assassinated, Cleopatra mourned but wasted no time moving on to her next Roman power play. Some might call it pragmatic, others might call it a rebound. 10. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, Hollywood's roller coaster romance. Let's end with a modern-ish breakup for the ages. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were the couple everyone loved to gossip about. They married twice and divorced twice, proving that some people just can't quit each other. Their love story had everything: diamonds, yachts, and enough fights to fuel an entire season of reality TV. Ultimately, their fiery passion burned out, but not before making Hollywood history. Conclusion: history has shown us that breakups are rarely clean, often chaotic, and sometimes world-changing. Whether it's Cleopatra juggling Roman lovers, Henry VIII redefining divorce, or Elizabeth Taylor turning heartbreak into box office gold, the common thread is drama, and lots of it. So, next time you're crying over an ex, just remember, at least your breakup didn't involve decapitation, exile, or public scandal. Probably. And hey, before you go, don't forget to subscribe. Stick around for more hilarious takes on history. Because while the past might be over, laughing about it is timeless.